Hello and thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. In this video I'm going to talk about grass textures and how to use them and how to blend them together and how to get the most amount of depth in your scenes through the usage of one or more of them in a combination. I'm just going to stamp this out in just black, just for the sake of the blending aspect of these different components here. There's different types of them. This one's called tall grass, small, tall grass right here. Sedge Filler, grass texture, and of course we have the reeds, okay? And this one's kind of one called the Sedge Cluster that combines the grass texturing along with a little bit of a waterside area. Could be water if you do it, add blues or something like that down there, but it also could be dirt or something like that. So, but for the most part, just a little bit of a change in texture. And all of these can be used with one another and with other stamps to create your land surfaces and to blend in perimeter areas of other subject matter, and I'll get to that as well. Okay, but first, the utilization of different sizes is something that can really push the depth within a given space. Typically, if you have something like this size of a grass texture along with this one right here, you can see the different textures in here, and this little area down here is like a smaller version of this same idea right here, okay? So let's use those together. But when you use these, going back to what I was saying, when you use these larger ones, what you're usually talking about is foreground, okay? If you can see the blades of the grass like that quite definitively, it's usually going to be something in your foreground. Okay, now when you use these, you can do this in different colors. If you want green grass, then you can stamp it in green. If you want it to be kind of a summertime thing, where the grasses have died out, do it in maybe browns or some sort. Some of those great kind of warm tones of like the Distressing series. Okay, that's about 3 impressions. Let's go for one more over here, okay? Kind of strange as is, but let's go in now with the Sedge Filler stamp, okay? And let's say we're going for a little bit of drama here, so let's kind of put this at a bit of an angle to create kind of visual movement. You don't always have to do that. I'm just doing it for this scene right here, or this kind of a foundation for a scene. Okay, now you see you don't have to do any masking. Masking would actually get in the way of having a nice seamless transition here, but you have larger formations down here and then smaller in the background. Well, it doesn't blend in really well just as is, but we rarely keep our scenes just as is. We're usually adding some additional colors, okay? But now where this stamp right here has kind of the reverse marks of kind of blades of grass, light blades within a darker kind of field there, what I like to do is I like to add larger blades in the form of this reeds large right here, and this will create kind of even more of a foreground. It'll continue the idea of the grassy blades, and it's enough of an airy stamp, meaning you can see the things in the back of it if you stamp it right over the top of something, to retain all that nice texturing of the background. I just smeared that right there with my thumb or something like that, but anyway, those were some large reeds, and what I like to do too, just to create some variation within this field, You can just take a ripped paper towel. Don't use it, the straight edge part of it, like that. Okay, you want it to have it be a little bit varied. So here's a torn edge, and I can lay this down here like so. And if you want, you can kind of reiterate what you've done in the real foreground in some areas, like about like so. And you get this nice grassy field. You can even add some more back in this distant area if you want to. Okay, so we have a little bit of a depth, or a lot of depth, within this given space down here. And in the background here, you can put some kind of subject matter, or maybe this would be going around some subject matter. Okay, so that's like a little grassy hill. Let's do something with that Sedge Filler stamp, okay? Alright. A lot of overlapping, right? I might change the height of this a little bit, just to create a little bit of variation. Okay, so I have our little kind of bank right there. And let's go to our Sedge Filler, okay? And let's fill out the top of this area. Okay. And there is a nice foundation for something like that. You can put some trees here. There could be a cabin in the background, or whatever you want to do. Okay. And you can also put some additional pebble textures down here. This could just be a meadow or something like that. You could put some sky up there. Or, let me do this right here too. We can also create a bit of a kind of a distant hill. I don't know, I guess it's not too distant, but there could be one hill here and one hill in the background. You can put some trees in between there, so it looks like the hill is kind of rolled down, and here's another one in the background if you want to. Let's keep going with that same idea. I'm just kind of stamping this on this edge of it, just to create, maybe like a third layer in the distance, right? Like so. So you have one that's ending here, another that's starting there, and the most distant hill in the background, just using a smaller portion of the Sedge Filler. And you can still do something like this with the reeds, if you want a little bit of foreground or something like that. Maybe this is just the wetlands or something like this, and this is like a little puddled area in kind of the the valley of this, these little, hills of grass, you can say, or something like that. Okay. Grass texture, just a little bit different from tall grass. Tall grass is more of like a uniform, not tuft of grass, but, area of grass. This one is just more straight texture. Okay. Again, overlapping. Okay, let's go like so. Like I said, if I wanted some color in this, I can bring in some greens or some light greens in there, for some variation, a little bit of browns maybe, stamp it out and get some color, okay? And then I can color in further, with pens or whatnot. Okay, this is the tall grass small, and you can have another layer in there of that if you want. You can see kind of more of the mounds of the grass, kind of the movement of it. Okay, and again with the Sedge Filler. I usually use the Sedge Filler to cap things off because it's kind of straight across the top, so it can create a little bit more of a kind of a definitive line up top there. So you get this different look right here. It's a little bit different than the kind of these more rounded forms. Okay, you have that. And let's go back to the reeds. Okay. You notice I kind of, change the angle with each impression. as I take this across the front of the, or the bottom front of the card here, because I don't want it to look too symmetrically stamped. And you know, it would be too obvious that the same stamp has been used over and over again. Okay, too much repetition, visual repetition. Okay, now where you use this type of texturing, or these different types of grass textures, let's take a look at this right here. This is the Waterside Bluff right. There's a right and left side of this that can be used in conjunction with one another, or they can be used separately depending on composition, size of one's card. Okay, let's say we have something like this. Okay, get plenty of pressure. Okay, we have something like that. Landscape stamping, you know, if we're doing a lot of composition and not doing something kind of like a minimal one stamp scene or something like that, we're always faced with how do you fill in the surrounding areas. Let's go back to, you know, there's grasses here, so let's go back. Let's try the tall grass stamp right here. Okay, so I have this area in here, and I'm going to add some of this tall grass right here. As I'm moving into the distance right here, as this trails off like that, let's try the Sedge Filler. Okay, overlap with each impression. I have this area right in here, no need for masking. We have that. So we've filled in here, and we have this area within the design where we have those little grasses right there. Let's extend the use of that shape, okay, in the form of the reeds large. It's like a larger version of it. If you want to, I mean, I can always just use the tip of this one, but just for the sake of, you know, variation, let's use the smaller reed stamp as well. So see, it's starting to incorporate or blend the scene, all these different components, better and better. Kind of the more texturing that you put in there. We have this reeds large stamp going across the tall grass. It's going across the Waterside Bluff, and it's almost going up into the, well, it is going up into some of the Sedge Filler stamp. So you have this kind of needle and thread that's running across. It's supposed to be, it represents foreground, you know, but it's kind of running through all these different images, so it kind of, you know, unifies them visually, and in doing so you also add depth and texture into the scene. All right, now I know you can stamp something like this cabin in the background, but let's start off with this cabin first. Usually I don't stamp out you know, all of my foreground first. If I'm working with kind of some larger imagery, and you notice I stamped this out first, and then I filled in with the filler stamps, you know, meaning the grass textures. It's just easier to do that than to, say, stamp out all that grass texturing and things like that, and then stamp this in afterwards. It's easier for me to work around the larger images and fill in the surrounding areas. Okay? Alright, let's take this cabin right here as a subject matter. Okay, let's do vertical here, just because I haven't done that so far in this video. Okay, got our cabin. Let's see, I tell you what, let's put, let's do something like this. Let's create a little bit of a pond using this, but maybe let's not take this all the way across the card from left to right. Let's do this right here. how about one more? Okay. And let's do... Yeah, I'm just doing this for the sake of this video as far as showing how to blend these different components. And let's take this grass texture stamp, stamp it there. And then let's go with the Sedge Filler. Okay, now we have this area in here to fill in. Alright. I like to re-ink in between impressions. I just think my impressions will be cleaner that way. Okay, now even with that cabin right there, if I want to, let's see here. If I want to, I can create some more of those distant hills, kind of like this one. It's like rolling hills, right? Let's put a hill in the background. Let's do it at a bit of an angle, like that. Let's say it's carried out over here. And do something like that. Alright, so we have kind of background, midground, foreground. Again, let's take it one step further and let's add in some texturing. Like about like so. And how about to carry the viewer's eye into the scene a little bit more through, and to create continuity, let's take our smaller reed stamp and let's get my mask again, and let's create a few more impressions with that same image, but the smaller version of it. Okay. And it's about like so. Okay. So, large, medium, small, and kind of small impressions of it, or bits of the Sedge Filler used, just kind of like half of it. So what I'm doing, let me show you like that. I'm just kind of, here's the full impression right here. And what I do is I have this at a bit of an angle like that, and then you can just, you know, use the top of it like that. Okay? Anyways, that is kind of the very basics of grass filler. That's what you do for kind of land areas. If you want grass, you know, or something like that, you can make it look plush by adding in greens and yellows and whatever. Make it look like I don't know what California does most of the time. We have brown hills throughout most of the year. So you can use things like brown tones, kind of those nice walnut stain, like I said, you know, the distress inks work really great in for landscapes as well. And just depending on how much depth you want in your grass textured areas, you can just move up into kind of the larger textures used in conjunction with something like the Sedge Filler. Okay? Anyway, there you have it. Now, these aren't complete scenes, I'm just showing you the grassy areas right down here. Oh, one of the things too, you can see how nicely these things can blend in with one another. Let's say I took, you know, if I was doing a large landscape, let's say 8.5 by 11 is pretty large by most of our standards in scenic stamping, you know, because mostly we're doing cards, just like anyone else. But you can see where this hill right here can match up nicely with this hill right here, okay? So you can even have it up there. I mean, I wouldn't have these large grass textures, but you can see just how nicely that blends in. So you can really use those grass textures for a huge, huge area if you wanted to. So right here. So let's put it like this, okay? Put it right here, okay? Some grass texturing, and let's take this one and put it about like so, you know? So you can see that how these, you know, you can have this gigantic meadow if you want. You can do 11 by 17 or something like that if you want to, or go across the entire wall, right? All right, so that'd be kind of an interesting composition right there. You know, if you take it a real super long one. Anyways, that's the blending of the imagery, and as far as grass textures go, I hope you hope that comes in handy if anyone has any questions on that. And thanks again for watching Stampscaping 101.